welcome Jesse to the call. I appreciate him joining. I'll do a quick intro. As I mentioned in the beginning, Jesse is the founder of LeadMagic. He's a rock star in the cold email space. He's got a big community in the cold email space, and he mentors probably thousands of people, even not maybe one on one, but in his community and stuff like that. A lot of people look up to him. So super excited to have Jesse here. So.
Hey man, that's a great intro. Thanks a lot, man. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, awesome, Jesse. I've got some questions and stuff. So this is for everybody on the call. This is going to be a little bit of a podcast style, um, back and forth with Jesse and I. I've got some, planned questions and things like that. But just open it up, Jesse, here on, for you, just to introduce yourself quick. Maybe just give us the 50,000 foot view about you and Lead Magic and your journey.
Yeah, so went from sort of enterprise software world. I was a sales rep covering like Fortune 50, went to sort of head of sales, VP of sales, realized, wow, I don't want to do that anymore. I did that for like 15 years actually, and then just decided to really start building my own sort of SaaS and products like that. As everyone probably has to start out, I started out a little bit as an agency. Then sort of started pivoting, had a kind of a grand plan towards a one type of product. It wasn't really as successful as I thought I would be there, and then pivoted off that and sort of built more on the data enrichment side, and that's been going very well. So we've established quite a good brand in that market, fortunately. So it's been scaling pretty well, but there's always a lot of complications. It's easy to try a couple times and fail, but
Sure.
we help people with a lot of people use this for either like email finding, mobile finding, or even other enrichment types like LinkedIn and other sort of like platform enrichment stuff that you might use.
Yeah, awesome. Appreciate that. And as I mentioned before, everyone sign up for LeadMagic.io. Really, he's got a lot of tools for email finding, but also I think he's got the most robust and accurate mobile finding list as well. I know that keeps growing and growing and gotten a lot of positive reviews. I think he's top in the clay waterfall and all that stuff. So really good data. But to peel back just to set the stage a little bit for everyone tuning in here, um, your enterprise experience. So I know the way you got into being this uh, basic. I think you're the top cold email influencer and one of the main ones that led the charge for email deliverability. Tell me about your experience of what happened in the enterprise that led you to even figuring out this whole strategy that, people like me, people like Vibev over at Smart Lead, the Instantly folks, all of them that started adopting some of your strategies. Tell us a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, well, it started actually. I was working at a company. I went to work for sort of a friend of mine, chief revenue officer. I came in as a sales strategy person. It was sort of my first like second like kind of all right. I'm not going to do individual contributing rep. I'm going to do something more on the strategy side. And what happened was it was one of these giant sort of like VC backed, had a lot of money. They raised a lot. And what happened was I realized that like the email signature was getting us into spam. So I wouldn't put it on. And then the CEO was like, it was like I don't know, it was like first month into the job, left the job for it and everything. And then they actually fired me for it. So, I was like, this is a little weird, So I just because I wouldn't put it on, and he didn't even know about it. I think it was more about them, the CRO or whatever, just like kind of caught in like a crossfire. But
I
you
know
know how it
people
is.
I know people are super in love with their signatures and they want images and they want their brand and all that kind of stuff. So what did you see specifically inside those signatures that was leading to
Yeah,
email
this one
failure?
was really rare. This one, and it was actually funny because after it was actually a huge engineering issue. So what I figured out was the DKIM wasn't working, but it was actually getting. I mean, I knew a little bit about IT before I got into sales, so I sort of kept that skill. But like what happened was it was getting it was like one of these like corporate signature systems where it would force the signature on your if you were using the Google email, right? It would force the signature on it. And what that
Oof.
did is it took the reputation of that signature product And if they didn't set up the DKIM right, it was handled at like the workspace level. So it was like authenticated at the workspace level. So it totally misaligned basically the authentication of the domain. And now people think you're either like spoofing the domain, and they were a security company too. So this was a major issue for their engineering team and everything. And you think as a company they would promote people like that, right? That's what I would do now, owning a business. I would promote people like that instead of fire them. But he might not have known that was they figured it out after they sort of fired me. Like, it was a huge save because the engineering team wasn't getting their transactional emails through.
So,
So
so lesson learned. Anybody on the call who's forcing their team to add these things into the signature, don't fire your team over trying to implement better email deliverability features if you're also trying to hit sales targets and sales goals.
yeah, yeah, do something different. And they rewrote the whole email, and it was just like a copy and pasted HTML. So it had like tracking pixels in it. It had like a bunch of things in it that just caused you to go to spam. And the whole company was having problems. Just nobody wanted to tell the CEO, and I think he was dealing with a lot with COVID and everything. That was about the time frame. So basically, changed a lot of my. I was glad he did though. It was the best moment of my life. I went on and built my own stuff, and it was just really couldn't have been better. I mean, if that didn't happen, like I look at it as like a very positive thing for me.
Yeah, nice, and that's good. Obviously, it led to building LeadMagic, which
Yeah.
little brag and shout out to you. I know your LeadMagic started out as a visitor identification tool, and you pivoted to some of the email finding and things of that nature, and just in less than a year built it to 1 million and an annual run rate, which is super hard to do. So congrats on that.
Yeah,
That's
thank you. It's been quite a journey. And with the visitor identification we were having, and there's some great tools out there. We weren't identity level. We were going more account level, which some ways I think is better, but like from my perspective, I think it's a little bit better to not involve your like totally go offensive on people visiting your website that don't know you. It's
yeah,
sort of like maybe you want to run ads, maybe you want to do like maybe a cold outreach to them, but not referencing that you're on the website. Sometimes is a better way to do it. Like it's kind of overhearing a conversation at a bar that you don't want to like, hey, I heard you were talking about you don't want to be a spy on it, right? So it's
yeah,
like one of the things like, hey, I saw you were on. You owe me a call back. You shouldn't be visiting my website. But we got there, and then we decided to pivot towards, we just really wanted to pivot towards the enrichment and use some of the brand that I had built in the cold email space. So we started with validation, then we added a lot of other data products, and we've got quite a few in there now. But the key stuff that people use this for is finding emails and finding mobiles and email validation. Those are like the three key, I'd say.
nice. What if there was one problem that in cold email that everyone's doing right now that they're
Mm.
addressing completely wrong? Like what do you think that thing is right today in like 2025? What do you think that one thing is that everyone's doing that they're really doing wrong right now? That might be a tough one. There might be
A lot
several.
of it is they'll set forget it, like they'll just like they're not looking they're like load. So it's so easy now to get a big list, and it's so easy to just take that list. And, I know you guys are starting to solve some of this problem. This like audience, like this first test that you do, and that sort of dictates the whole thing, right? Like and not only like it's not only just the company fit, it's actually now one of the things that matters a lot is we found is like which email providers they're on, right? So obviously the bigger companies have higher security, higher delivery, like it's much harder to get them an inboxed email because that's the number one attack surface for all security.
Yep.
So if you can focus on the Google email systems, the workspace, and this is one of the things we do give in the platform, we tell you which inbox type they have. So people, what they do is they'll filter down. They'll go, okay, I want to hit Google first and then valid first, right? That means we've checked it. It's a network call that we're checking. So it's there's really just no way it'll bounce, right? A very
Yeah.
small percentage.
Yep.
So you do that and you get out of the gate pretty fast and you get some replies, you get engagement. It might not be positive, but at least they're replying, they're seeing it. Now you can go sort of continue that campaign because those, the domains that people will spin up, they'll start with an audience that doesn't respond, that doesn't have, you can't really hit their deliverability You don't get any deliverability in the primary inbox, so you're now not getting any responses. Then you couple on a few reported spam. Now you're talking about a compounding impact throughout the campaign. You've now basically just like you got to get the momentum in the beginning. You got to get like a yes or no in the beginning,
Yep.
and you got to try to stay out of the spam filter, right? Like this is the number one yes or no, and you got to kind of get or neutral that you don't, something you can follow back up on. And I think that is what you really got to and you were talking just when I was coming on and I saw some of your stuff. It's that stuff really that people are just not doing right now. They're not measuring it. They're like, oh, it's broken. And usually they blame whatever sequencer they're using, right? Like that's the weirdest part of it, which usually that's the least of your problems a lot of the times.
Yeah. Yeah, I can say that, and a lot of people think it might be the sending tool, but
Yeah.
really comes down to strategy. So the takeaway that I heard that everyone should probably write down is uh, the best way to inbox and get momentum is starting with valid emails sending to Google accounts. So Google's a lot easier to inbox and get results with today. And then would you follow that up with like custom email accounts that and then Microsoft, or what is your strategy
Uh,
there?
so Microsoft lightened. Look, this is all like if we have this like 3 weeks from now, it's going to be different. So don't take anything like if depending on when you're watching it, January 21st, Tuesday, right afternoon here. But I would say right now we did see a little bit of lightening up on Microsoft's side. We saw some promising signs that they definitely restrict a lot of emails right out of the gate, and we even found evidence of like an outbound filter where they're like scanning it on the out. Like we're testing this a lot. We just have a lot of internal data
Yeah.
just because we have the reach there of a lot of agencies that we're working with. But basically, like we're seeing that. I would say next you'd want to go valid. I think you can get some Office that are valid, although there's a lot of catch-alls in the Microsoft system. So if you go there next, you
That's like
want to go valid.
99% or something like that, I think I mean,
Yeah,
it's a crazy high number.
yeah. And if you basically if you get you want to go for the so this is one of the things, and I don't want to turn this like I know some people joke around like I sort of and you probably should use both as like the find emails of the world and the other ones that what they're not telling you is when they give you those emails, they're not telling you if it's a valid email or not, right? And what I mean by valid isn't like it's a checkbox of like, is it a network call valid? It's a different, so when people say the email is valid, it means they've done a check on it. And what people do is they blend the catch-all and the valid ones together. I know this is getting into the weeds a little bit, but like if you can get the valid ones first, no matter what you do, they're going to have a better engagement, whether it's negative or whatever, which is what helps you. You need to get that momentum in the beginning and prioritize there. Then go to the all the valids, after that. And then I would go start looking around the smaller company ones that don't have the security. The ones that are hard are like Proofpoint, Mimecast, Cisco Ironport, Barracuda. Like all of those systems are really hard to inbox in right now. So you gotta have a little bit of a reputation built up, a good one, right? Like they're
Yeah.
not reporting you as spam. No, no, not getting replies is the worst thing you can have happen, right?
Yeah.
You have
Yeah.
to engage the person. They have to feel compelled, and you have to get a response to that message, and it can't be them right clicking and clicking spam, which
Yeah,
is
that
also
that's
why
that that's the death blow right there. Yeah.
that's the
The
blow.
That's the blow for sure.
Yep.
And that's what I've seen too is we get people like I'll use the term overzealous I mean in a positive way, but people sign up for upticks and hopefully soon lead engine, but um they come in, they get a big list, they get their inboxes, their domain set up, and then they just start rattling volume and they haven't really implemented, they haven't adapted or really figured out deliverability. They haven't implemented, sending to just Google first. And then after you figure that out, then adapting your copy for optimization and stuff like that too. So see that time and time again for sure. So what do you think from your perspectives, like the most overlooked part of setting up a good foundation for email deliverability?
Yeah, so there's a lot of right now where I think some of the risk is there's a lot of temptation around, and look, some of it is okay, but there's a lot of these like, okay, I figured out now I can go set up some inboxes. I can get 3 to 5% reply. I'm now back in business, 5% or more. They'll go out and they'll buy like these like massive, they'll buy like these. very cheap inboxes a lot of the times from resellers in countries that they're not emailing. There's nothing wrong with those countries. It's just you're not emailing from that country. So they'll buy this like all these inboxes for so cheap. And what they don't realize is those inboxes sometimes carry a different reputation score. They've kind of flagged the reseller or at least we've seen evidence of, and they'll get him so cheap and they'll basically like either they might not even set him up, so their authentication a lot of the time is off, like the major things, or even worse is that the reputation of that whole seller, that reseller, is impacting your own deliverability. Now you don't really know how you like look, all of this deliverability stuff is just basically guessing. Like nobody really actually knows. We could
Yeah.
just guess with the information we have and the testing. So like when I say it, I've tested it a lot, right? Like there's a lot of testing going on. So it's, I've got access to a lot of different,
Yeah,
systems
besides
that,
yourself, you've got access to what people who are sending
yeah,
millions and millions of emails every single
really,
month,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, and more than even, yeah, like even, yeah, just tons of. And what we're seeing is like, and a lot of types of campaigns, right? And certain people's results I'm not going to take serious until I see what, like, I have to understand what they're doing too, and like what their product, like, how are you setting up the inboxes? Who's checking DKIM? Who's checking all the authentication? All of that stuff impacts. Like, there's only a few that I like really know have their process down, and this is where I think some of the, 1% of anything you do, like there's a certain group of people that sort of dominate their field. And these are the people that I talk to a lot of the time. And so it's like, and Patrick's in that group. So listen to what he's telling you. But, I mean, it really is just like not setting the steps up and then ignoring the fact that Google right now is much easier to inbox and get replies from than Microsoft.
Yep. Yeah, I've seen that too across all the different data points. Much easier. We've been doing some things to help on the Microsoft side and whatnot, but it's definitely takes a little time and planning and whatnot. You mentioned on the Microsoft. Most people on the call are probably unfamiliar with that. There's been a lot of noise about deliverability with Microsoft. Um, like, what do you think people should sort of rethink? In terms of sending to Microsoft, should they just avoid it altogether? Should they do lower volume? Should they write shorter emails? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, that's a great question. If you're going to start sending with Microsoft, like, or if you're sending to, let's talk about both scenarios. Like, if you're sending with a Microsoft, there's a couple of vendors that have specialized in this. I'm very careful to recommend the vendors because I know that these things can go awry but knowing that they're kind of decoupled from the reseller problem that I just mentioned, that helps me like talk about them a little bit. And they're both probably similar in a sense. Scaled Mail and
Hypertide?
Hypertide. There you go.
Yeah.
I knew the other one. Both founders I know pretty well, and they're decent, both decent guys. So, I would look at them if you're going to be sending on Microsoft. I would definitely look at them, and they're not really doing it like traditionally, like Microsoft resellers would do it. So you should definitely talk to them. But the general is like, have somebody who knows like the Microsoft system they can do it. There's some stuff they're doing that's pretty innovative. I would also look at like your copy. One of the big things that we're seeing is this like concept of if your email is really similar, and I'm even talking a little bit further than like syntax. It's like there was a guy, Dean, that posted, he's one of the Scaled Mail founder. He was posting about this the other day. You can look at his post on LinkedIn, or Nick Abraham was posting about it on Twitter.
Yes, I saw
Uh,
Nick post about that too.
it's this outbound filter that they have where it sort of says like, hey, if these emails look close, put them in spam right away, right? Like they're being very like they really just when they put something in spam, it causes IT issues, right? That's the down, that's the spiral that happens. So they're not like doing it intentionally. I mean, they kind of profit on both sides of it, so it's not really like a no. They don't want like just blatant trash coming into your inbox, right? But they're probably like they have to play like a fine line here.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it's better if they don't, people like their product better if there's no, like the spam factor. But, big companies adopt much more aggressive systems because the cost of a hack, or like that's the biggest attack vector. Security is another issue, right? But that's how I would say is like keep your copy very different. In fact, I think you're probably going to use a little bit of AI. That's I know what you're doing is some pretty awesome stuff, but you got to use stuff like that right now, and you really have to be careful on how you're setting up the Microsoft because we're seeing people get zero, and emailing Microsoft is even harder. It's like same things I just mentioned again, but it could be even worse.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to inbox in the Microsoft system right now. It's
Yeah.
getting a little easier the last few weeks, but we're noticing, when I talk about this, I'm talking about fairly new domains, right? So the outlier is if you have sort of an infrastructure that's built on some aged domains, but most people in the cold email aren't doing that. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Most don't plan like kind of plan ahead. And
all right,
so
yeah, you take it.
if you take some of what I suggested, just for everyone, just an actionable item with this is having backup domains, backup inboxes, like I talked about at the beginning of the call, can help solve for this. So you can rotate things out, things of that nature. And then I'll share on the next call, I'll share some copywriting strategies that can help inbox because I've seen over the years, like anytime I run like multiple copywriting tests, multiple different frameworks, multiple different topics that I'm talking about, the results in terms of reply rates, interested rates, opportunity rates, that kind of stuff are always better when you have more varied copies. So to piggyback on Jesse's point there. So I'll talk more about that on the next call. Um, Obviously with scaling cold email because everyone wants to scale. Email's easy, of course, like everyone wants to do it. The It's perceived as easy, right? But scaling always comes with its challenges. But like in your experience, like what's the most effective way to maintain sort of like a maybe a personalization or relevance, I would say, without sacrificing volume?
Yeah, so I think the personalization stuff's gone too far. Like people, I mean, there's a little bit of value you get from it, but like if your email is like you saw something, who cares? Like you have to explain your offer relevant to them. And this is where I think the companies have a lot of problems is like they're getting bad reply rates because they're just like, there's nothing in the email that they might have the problem, but they're just not going to reply. And this is where it helps to understand your market and really understand that like avatar of the person you're selling to. Like, what is that person? What's their desire? Like, and the way that we buy as people, as humans is we buy emotionally and we sort of use ration and rational thought to back it up, like more like number based. So sometimes people go too far with numbers in the beginning. They're like, hey, you could say, right, like how do I get to that point? You almost have to
Yeah,
really go in for emotion first, and we got it backwards a lot of the time. So if you go for the emotion first, but you're there to help them, and that's what your company specializes in. But right now, I think people are expecting you to send how I'll give you an example, right? Let's say you were selling an agency service to a company and you were doing it was like into paid ads or something like that. If you could talk to them about their either, something on their website that could be impacting their paid ads, or you talk about maybe how much they're spending if you have access to sort of like spend data on ads. Those two use cases are like, okay, you're spending this much, it's probably costing you this much. We help companies like that because this is what we do, and like we've noticed this. Or your website, here's something I noticed on your website. If you improve this, we do a lot more like this. It's just, you're offering some value right away. I think what happens is people just go in, they're either personalized or not. If they're not, then it's like now it's just literally copy and paste email, get rid of
yeah.
it, just delete.
So it kind of comes
Just
down to the
doing
kind
it
of comes
awesome.
down to the like I was talking earlier about the different list building strategies. So like intent, when I say intent leads, and I explained earlier, I don't necessarily mean like the intent leads you get from a database of people they think, are searching for a certain term, but intent signals that you can use to build your lead lists around. So it sounds like building relevant lead lists might be the kind of the main takeaway of success and whatnot around that. I would it sounds like.
Definitely. Yeah, there's no question. And this is why even like, I know you want to go big right away, but the other problem is people will go out and they'll figure out who their top customers are. They'll go and target their best ICP before, and they'll go hit them even in inboxes that they're never going to inbox in. It's like, well, wait a second. Maybe you got to go send 500 emails, or sorry, like to 500 people, maybe even more than that, right? Like that 2,500. But maybe we don't start our top. I know this is counterintuitive, but like, let's start people that maybe we think are like a secondary part of it. I know the list keeps getting more narrow, and that's where people are really struggling with cold email. So I think you got to really weigh that battle of like testing. If you test without like you can't necessarily generate another group of your best customers again, right?
Yeah.
So maybe saving some of those intent signals that you already have in your business and know could be something you do a little later
Yep.
after you start getting the replies. Because look, in the beginning, you really just have to get the deliverability down, right?
Yep.
That's really, I mean, you have to get like a no, yes, neutral. You have to see what that ratio is. And if you're not getting that right away, something is clearly wrong. And you need to figure that out before you go to the next step of like getting positive replies, right? So I
Yep.
think the ways you broke it down earlier were really good. And if you follow a format like that, it could really help you.
Nice. Yeah, no, that's good. I've even, I mean, in the past, I've encouraged people to Um, I'm a fan of personalization and things of that nature. If you can do it at scale, fantastic. To Jesse's point, I don't think it, in some regards, it doesn't matter as much. But you do see a positive uplift
Yeah.
in results. But I've told people like master the automated copy first, and those emotional triggers, the problems, case studies, offers with kind of standard leads first because you can do it at volume and you can do it faster, and then take that success that you ultimately end up figuring out, and then applying that to more relevant leads, whether it's lookalike, whether it's intent based, things of that nature. So, I
Yep.
think that's
Yep.
great advice.
And look at it as a more of like I think another thing people do is get down like right away, like, oh, like I got so many negatives. Like that's the other problem that's happening right now is like, they go out and they get so many negatives, they blast an audience, they miss the message, right? And they were proud of the message because it's like it's like it's part of them, right? Like it's their business. It's very crucial to them. And what I see people do too often is they give up really early and
Yeah.
they just like anything, you're never good at it like the first time you do it, right? I don't want to go there too badly, but you get it, right? Like it gets a little more interesting as you continue. And if you could streamline the process for doing all of the stuff that's really manual, which is like loading lead list, enriching data, building the copy, I know you guys are helping there, and just building that target list, what you guys are doing. I mean, it's if you can do that, it's just such a huge like, but go for the replies first and know that they're not going to be positive, right? Like you
Yeah.
probably aren't. Like there's a lot more to it, right? This and I guess one other thing I'd say is if you think you're going to go in and just you have no brand, nobody can find you on LinkedIn, nobody can find you on any website, that stuff is like you got to go put up a website. It should take you 15 minutes and you could do one that's just as good as any of the other companies out there, right? Like the website stuff has gotten a lot easier.
Yeah.
And I think you gotta put your brand on there and you got to get on LinkedIn, put a photo up, do something like, even if you're like, this isn't working for me, you got to really they got to be able to find you on the internet. That's the first thing they're going to do.
Yep. Yeah, it's the intangibles. I talk about that a lot too, is if you send an email and they're like, this is a great email and I'm really interested, and then they go and check out your website and it's a ghost town, or looks like
Yeah,
it's built in 1992, and like you're done. If you have no social proof, if you have no credibility, if it's not mobily responsive, things this like it's you're not going to get the traction. So it's a lot of the success I've found is just having a presence, and making it look like you're on the internet, you've helped people before, you have a presence, and that you're not just this person, this curmudgeon sitting in the corner, trying to, steal people's money, like, the a Nigerian prince or something, just emailing them out of the blue asking for something, right? So, those intangibles are a big piece of success for sure.
totally. Yeah, no, it's just so easy to do some of this stuff. It's just like it does not take long. Just set it up. Like you don't need to have 50,000 followers or anything. But you do need to put something up, maybe put something up with video on it so people can see that you're a real that you're gonna try. I mean, maybe you could figure out a way to do it without being a real person doing it, but I guess at that point they probably want to hire you anyways, right? So it's like
Yeah.
I- you just have to really go out there and do it, and you can't be a ghost town on any of the social media networks. You really have to put it out there. And if you put it out there, somebody has to at your company, right? Your founder, marketing, somebody has to do it. That stuff just, even if you're like, it just seems arrogant to ask otherwise, like that you don't have to do the same things that I know there's a low bar at entry sometimes,
Yeah,
but you have to be very careful there. That actually creates a bigger problem is like there's a low bar at entry, but there's a lot of people who aren't doing it very well. That's sort of what I've learned about working with a lot of, I've worked with some of the top agencies that do email, cold email, and the ones that are doing better have a brand, they have a website, a couple pictures of people on the website, maybe the founder story, like, treat them to something, give them something so they can actually, because they have to sell that internally too, right? Like that's
yeah,
their money. You have to think through this stuff. You can't just like roll it out the same way maybe you could have in the past, but
yeah,
people
yeah.
look.
No, that makes total sense. On the wanted to ask you something on the list building. We'll wrap up here in just a minute. But obviously your platform is big in the list building. What's like one next level approach to list building you think most people are missing right now?
Yeah, so for list building, what we're seeing is like they the list is pretty much always in the same place. It's always on social media, right? Like it's always on a business platform that does social media. We all know where the data is.
Yep,
It's really a matter of how do you make sure you get those search targets the right way, right? So if you're like, oh, I want to go get a giant list. Well, you can only get 2,500 really at a time, right? So you have to understand like, how do I segment this list the right way, right? When somebody gives a supremely broad, like when you're like, okay, my target market is this, and it's like, yeah, but is that who you want to go after? So the person you want to go after in the first email, in the first part of the cold email campaign, it's not necessarily that C-level person or like that unless it's like an offer for that size of a company or like a smaller company or like that. What you really need to focus on is you have to target the person who has the most like to lose with that problem, that's in the problem all the time. And hopefully you know that or you have some theories on that because that's what you want to get right. And that person has to be sort of they're not a champion, right? They're more of like the person who can move things around and maybe they're new. Maybe because then they got something to prove. Maybe they need to bring in a new idea. Now they're willing to kind of like push it through. The people that are probably the worst, like that's one of the things we'll do is a tenure look, right? When I put the list together, I'll look up a tenure of all of the people at the company. And I'll be like, well, some of these newer people are going to be a lot better to target. That's one of the things. So putting a lot of those attributes on there, looking up tenure, like that's a good one. How many years, months have they been there? What's their background? That sort of thing. Like, but those people got to get in there, and you got to give them a really, they're based on a hero journey, right? Like some other customer that you've had, somebody else got something. They're in the same boat. They want to learn how that happened. They're willing to at least be educated, depending on what your call to action is, right? So
yep.
going up too high, list building is really about like honing in and find the ones, go for a smaller list if you're worried about it.
Yeah,
Test that
and almost
first.
a little bit of a bottom up strategy, not necessarily target the person that you mean to initially target, but someone closer to the problem. And in terms of a copy perspective, just an actionable thing for people to think about if you implement a strategy like this is instead of course booking for a meeting, the call to action might be like, are you the right person for to you know talk to about this, right? And they might say, no, I'm not, reach out to so and so. They might say, yeah, I'm the right person, but then you got to move kind of up the ladder from there. So it might take a little bit more than just the initial email, and you got to really have that nurturing and follow up practice kind of put in place.
Yep. Yeah, you nailed it. I mean, it's a lot of the times, sometimes expectations are real. Like I talk to companies that they've raised a bunch of money, they've done a lot, everything, they think everything's perfect. The only thing that's not is like they really haven't figured out their buyer yet. I mean, I'm sorry, like they haven't figured out their buyer in the org, and the person who's going to buy it is the person closest to the problem that has to deal with it every day. They're willing to go take a risk because ultimately it's what it is if they respond to your cold email, that's a risk.
Yeah.
There's I get a lot of cold emails. There's very few of them that I've ever responded to. Now I'm sort of automating some of it because there's some of those people are good sort of prospects for what we're doing, and I'm helping them obviously by pointing out some of the things that I think. Not I don't give them like copy advice, but more like, hey, your records are off, by the way,
Yep.
and I'm not sure if you're finding your emails today. I'm not setting up a call with them, of course, because it's a $99 product that you buy with a credit card, but you know, at least give them some information, give them some value. I get a lot of emails, right? And these emails are like there's a lot of this bump email stuff that's going on, and it's just fatiguing. And I'll tell you, the more bumps I get is directly correlated to how many report spams you do, right? Like
Yep.
if you bump a lot, you're going to go in. If you're not adding a little bit of something in every single one of these emails, those bumps cause that's where the reported spam stuff comes from.
Yeah, it
It's
just
the
gets
bump.
annoying and it's you got to be really good with copy if you're going to keep sending threaded emails and whatnot.
Yep,
So a trend
totally.
just for an actionable item for everybody on the call is like prioritize net new leads, at least initially. You'll probably get more end results that you're looking for. Long term, you definitely want to nurture and follow up. But instead of sending 5 or 10 email sequences, pare back to like two, maybe three. And move on to the next ones, and then put those in what I call looping sequence. What do you
Yep.
see? We'll wrap up here in just a minute. What do you see for trends sort of shaping up? If you had your crystal ball, over the next
Mm.
12 to 18 months, like what do you think is going to be the most important thing to be
So I
successful?
think there's going to be a lot of focus on the efficiency on that front end part of loading the campaigns. The stuff that you're talking about, like some of the operational efficiency there. I think where it'll be like challenging right now is around, we've talked about this a little bit, is like the true AI SDR, I think is going to take a lot of money and a lot of education to go to the next level.
Yeah,
I think you'll see companies that are starting to do this more and they sort of call it that. But where I think they're going to start in the beginning is more of a research agent, or they're going to be more like copy agent, or, you're going to have like, there's going to be something before people go to full blown AI, I think, and there's a human in the loop there somewhere, and the person who's buying it probably doesn't view it as an AI SDR, right?
yeah,
I think that model, if you don't have already raised 80, 90 million, 100 million and have investors ready, and they're not going to have any money, like they're going to be gone, they're going to have no revenue and no money, and they're going to basically be like, okay, well, we've now become the market leaders. And I think what the challenge there is like their company is all purely based on all the funding they've gotten. So
yep,
then it becomes, all right, well, what can these people, like that battle will be won eventually when the systems are even more efficient
more
and people are
advanced.
sort of bought into other workers in their company that might, that aren't like sitting with them, right? Like AI systems and things like that. But I think that's some of the trends that you're going to look at. A lot of the sequencers are sort of going all AI SDR. I mean, the only thing I'd say in common is they're all not going to have any revenue. That's going
Yeah.
to be the problem.
Yeah, we're
And
trying
I
to
think,
solve we're trying to solve some of that obviously with LeadEngine.ai
yep,
in a slightly different way, less like AI SDR, but the next evolution that's going to actually get results is
yep,
AI is not really good enough yet to just take over the reins and have this promise of like unlimited, scale. Like there is an expertise there that AI can't apply. We're trying to solve some of that for people right now with the new platform. But yeah, I totally agree. And actually, some of your feedback has helped us shape the product. So
yeah, that's great.
looking forward to that.
I think what you'll find is there's going to be okay. So like when I was in sales, there was always a lot of like technology people that wanted to like, and now I'm probably more on the engineering side. I'm definitely coding and everything. But there was always a lot of engineering people with sort of an opinion on how to run a sales organization. And they had some good suggestions occasionally, and sometimes they were good for that stuff, but other times they were just absolutely terrible. And I think where it's gonna basically you're gonna have to turn sales people, the people that are gonna have to be sort of the ones that come through the glass first are going to be the ones that get more bloody, of course, as they come through. Have you heard that saying before? But
Yeah,
what's going to end up happening is you're going to need salespeople to be a little more technical. They're going to have to kind of do some of the stuff. And you're seeing a lot of this with this like GTM engineering motion. But there's going to be people that are not in sales, they're not in marketing. I'm sorry, they're not in sales and marketing, and they're not in the product development. So they're in a weird gap, right?
yeah,
If they're not in. success. So that gap is going to be filled hopefully by, making like 12 months ago, I wasn't able to build an app. Now I've got a SaaS product that I've got more code in it than, probably anybody on the team, right? So like, and I can't code really. It's more AI development, things like that. So this is like what I'm seeing is like you're going to need the people that know how to actually do the job, the domain experts. And I know you're closely working, which is why I'm excited about what you guys are doing. I think it's so critical that you can like organization, and that's what I'm seeing still with these AI SDRs. I'm always looking at the CEO and the found, and then I'm looking at the CEO, then I'm looking at the technical founder, and I'm like, yeah, this isn't going to work. This person, you know, they're just not in it, right? That CEO better be looking, like that technical founder, I think is going to have to come more from the sales side,
Yeah,
really make these things work. Because if you don't have that, like, anybody who's really good at sales knows what certain things can have as a downstream impact to a message. And, that EQ and IQ is a very interesting discussion. And I think that's why I felt I would be unique if I went more technical
yeah,
as a sales, right?
yep. No, that
Yeah.
makes sense.
That
We'll
was
leave
what I
that.
saw.
Nice. No, that's super good uh, feedback and getting people to think about how to implement this thing and be successful. So, what's the one thing we'll leave it at this that everyone, and then we'll get I'll do a quick Q&A at the end with any of the questions. But what's the one thing if somebody implemented today that could help them?
Gmail valid.
Gmail
Gmail
valid.
valid.
Awesome. So you
There's
you guys
nothing
heard
better. And I noticed every platform, like I started talking about it, like I noticed every single like email platform is like sort of copied this strategy too, which it's pretty obvious, but it's like if you're doing it, like if you're emailing Gmail valid, you're going to get way better response rates right now. And that's as of today. I just want to make sure, like if this, I have another webinar out there where I think I was talking about what people were doing with Zoho at the time.
Yep.
Well, that everything changes in the email space. Like you got to keep an eye on it. We're run a group. It's pretty big, and we just get a lot of different trends that we're seeing. And I usually when I look at any of the advice, I try to reject all of the advice until I test it myself.
Yep.
Just then I don't feel as like I reject all the common advice. No matter there's certain people who might give some advice in there, and then I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna wait until I test that myself. Like even some of the, I love to see the information myself and do that. I guess that's just anybody who's really into that stuff. So I'd say the Gmail valid right now, what I've seen is dramatic. And I know I'd sort of like talked about this early on, and now it's everywhere. I mean, if you look in Clay, even I think 10 of the email 10 of the email finder copied what we did on that. They love to copy what we're doing, but they'll
Yeah.
never be us. So they can't win. But that's the way it is, man. It's just Gmail valid is the number one thing right now. Email Gmail accounts that are valid. Google Workspace.
Awesome. That's awesome advice. Well, Jesse, I really appreciate all your
Yeah.
insights. Thanks for hopping on, man. I'm gonna
Well,
everyone who's on the call still. Um, support Jesse, and you all need to build lead lists anyway. So go sign up for LeadMagic.io, and great platform. And we're using a lot of his APIs to inside of Upticks, and it'll be even more present inside of LeadEngine.ai. So support him. Go sign up for a
thank you.
trial and whatnot. And we'll talk to you soon. And I'll cover some
Appreciate it.
Q&A quick here for everyone,
Thank you.
and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, love it. Thanks a lot. I really love what you're doing, Patrick. Thanks for all the chats, dude. I know we talk cold email a lot, so let's go. Let's get back to the primary. Take it
Back to
easy.
the primary. All right. Sounds good.